friends, and welcome to day 5 of the May Painting Challenge. And some dry brushing. What am I doing, you might ask? Why am I not painting the actual miniature? Sorry, I gotta pick some more paint up here. The dry brush was too dry. Well, the thing is, I can't paint my main guy right now because I don't have enough time. The thing is, the stage I'm at right now with him is to do the highlights of the blue. And the way I work is when I want to do highlights on a certain area, I want to do it all in one go. I want to do all the highlights in succession. It's partly because of the way I mix paints. I mix my colors in sort of by feel, not by any exact proportions. And that makes it difficult to pick up where I left off if I interrupt it and try to pick it up the next day. And partly it's simply I don't want to interrupt my workflow. I just sort of lose inspiration. So, and I don't have the time I need. I'm going to need a couple of, like 2 hours uninterrupted to finish the blues on this dude. And I don't have that time today. I will tomorrow. Tomorrow evening I will do that, I promise. So I'm doing some preparatory work on these base options I had by dry brushing some mid-gray. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm using a GW paint here because they're good for dry brushing because they're so thick. It's what's it called? Storm Vermin Fur. But it could have been any mid-tone gray. And see, on this one, it's not going to be gray. I'm just doing a gray coat because I'm thinking I want this to be very pale colors, like it's old faded mosaic. And doing pale colors right on top of black is difficult. So this is sort of an in-between, an intermediary layer. On this one, I don't know if you can see, but yeah, there's cobblestones at the bottom. There's other decorations on top here, but the base layer of the base, so to speak, seems like cobblestones. So that should be gray, actually, and so I'm going to do a lighter gray brush on that as well. But, you know, apart from this, I don't think a lot is getting done on my main project today. So I think I will cut to a segment where I'm answering the question of the day. See you there. The question of the day is to show off some minis that I'm proud of. Of all the minis you own, what's the pride of your collection now? Right now, why show it off? Well, I have several to show you. These are some of the latest projects I did. These are some Christmas themed minis, as you can see. They are by Reaper Miniatures. And I'm kind of proud of these because, well, they're nicely painted. I painted them to a theme, did some good snow work. I just like them because they're a bit lighthearted and fun. Another one that I'm proud of is this wizard here. If you can see him. He's one of the first minis I painted to what I thought to be a pretty high standard. He's one of the ones I learned how to do many subtle layering effects on. He's also one of my first attempts at non-metallic metal. The sword is NMM. It's not the greatest, but it's one of my best efforts to date. I still need to practice that technique a lot. Also, I thought the scenic base I did was kind of interesting, the rocks he's standing on. Finally, I want to show you these. These three eyes, these are by a different company. These are from Hassle-Free Miniatures, an English company. A sculptor named Kev White. Here we have some barbarians. These guys are the ones where I practiced my skin tones and learned to make efficient use of skin tones. And I practiced the difference between male and female. See, the guys are much more defined, more cut, so to speak, and the effects on the female are more subtle. On this guy, I actually also practiced a little bit of lighting, because if you look at him, you see his head is bent forward. So realistically, if you used a perfectly zenithal lighting scheme where it was coming from right above like this, his face would be in shadow. I didn't want that. So I imagined instead that the light was coming sort of an angle like this. And what that means is that the front of him should receive more light than his back. So you can see like the belly, his six-pack, very well lit. And the back, it's not just the light actually, it's painted to be darker here in the small of his back and down here. It's kind of subtle, and you know, most people don't even notice it until I point it out to them. But yeah, I like it. Say hello to Wolf, the Barbarian, and Volk, and Marina. Those are the names in the Hassle-Free catalog, by the way. Anyway, those are some of the minis I'm proud of right now. This video was in danger of running a bit short, so I got this idea. I'd like to provide you with some bonus content. This is not related to the painting challenge, except indirectly, in that I mentioned that I have a second method for painting eyes. I thought I'd demonstrate this on this guy. Now, he's been base coated. The face's flesh has been base coated a pale color because he's an elf. You don't need to. You can do this. Actually, it's probably better to do it the first thing you do before base coating the flesh, but you can do it after the base coat, as long as you don't shade or highlight. And what you do is you take the off-white and you simply paint a stripe across his eyes like this. And now this paint is really wet, so it's going to take a little while to dry. I might need a pause. Okay, so the off-white is dry. The next stage is the only really tricky one. You have to take your finest brush and put a very small amount of black paint on it, and then draw a thin line straight across the middle of each eye, like so, and like that. So now he's got clown eyes. This looks really sloppy, you might be saying. Well, stages 3 and 4 are cleanup. Stage 3 is taking a darker color than your basic skin tone. In this case, I've got something called dark flesh tone from Vallejo, and I'm using that to draw in the outline of the eye. You go up to the edge of where you want the white to be, and you create an eye, like so. And once you've done this, all you need to do is cover up most of this dark brown. You go over it with your base skin tone again, most of this, and just leave a thin line of this dark brown around the whites of the eye. and you will be done. Now I had to hold this at an angle that's better for me than for the camera, because this is kind of tricky work. Even though it's easier than some methods for eyes, it still requires a steady hand and seeing exactly where you're placing the paint. And like that. And boom, there, I think. Maybe a little too much there, but hey, it's in shadow under all this hair of his. So, is this dry? Well, let that dry for a second. Back to work. Now we have the cadmium flesh that I'm using as the base tone, and I'm reestablishing this over most of this area. Now I want to be careful as not to cover up too much. It's especially tricky when you're painting the side of the nose. You have to be careful not to have too much water in your brush at that moment, because then it will run down and flood into the eye socket, which is annoying because then you have to do everything over again. See, you can see I've started to cover it up here. It might take a couple of coats, but most of that is on the cheekbone where you're going to put highlights anyway. And like so. So I can keep working at this to tidy it up even more, but you get the basic idea of it, right? A relatively simple and straightforward way to make eyes. And like I said, if you do it the first thing just over primer before you even put on the base coat, it becomes even simpler. Well, that is all I wanted to show you today. So, until tomorrow, this is Dakian signing off.